You're not our biological daughter. We've been hiding this from you for all these years."
Jenny, a girl who had led a peaceful life until then, was instantly devastated by this cruel truth. She had always thought she had a happy and perfect family, but this one sentence turned her world upside down. However, a series of events that followed completely reshaped her understanding of family, truth, and herself. Hey everyone, welcome to Worldly Whispers. Let's get started. Jenny Clark's seemingly ordinary life is irrevocably altered when she stumbles upon the astonishing truth that she was kidnapped as a toddler from an orphanage and illegally adopted by James and Catherine Pfizer. This earth-shattering revelation hits her like a ton of bricks, leaving her in a state of profound shock and heartbreak. She has always believed that the life she led with her parents was genuine, only to now realize that it has been built entirely on a foundation of lies. Despite this, she can't simply discard the deep-seated love and care they have shown her over the many years. The moment the truth surfaces, Jenny's world is thrown into chaos. She is immediately engulfed in a complex and arduous journey of legal battles and intense emotional distress. These legal proceedings are not only confusing, but also extremely draining, both mentally and emotionally. In the midst of this turmoil, she turns to her sister Samantha, who, at a tender age of 18 and just beginning her first job, becomes her pillar of support. Samantha, with her youthful yet determined spirit, welcomes Jenny into her life without hesitation, offering her a safe haven. The court, recognizing the delicacy of the situation, and social worker Anne, with her professional experience and empathy, jointly advised Jenny to refrain from any contact with her adoptive parents for the time being. They believe that she needs to take the necessary time to process the overwhelming emotions that have been unleashed by this revelation. However, Jenny is resolute in her decision to embrace her true identity. She firmly insists on being called Jenny Clark, disregarding Anne's gentle suggestion to take a more measured approach. This decision is a powerful statement of her newfound determination to reclaim her real self, despite the potential emotional risks involved. In the aftermath of the initial shock, Jenny and Samantha start receiving letters from James and Catherine. These letters, filled with a mix of regret, longing, and a plea for forgiveness, keep arriving. The fifth letter is no different. It once again begs for a meeting, this time with the condition that Anne and the authorities be present to oversee the encounter. Jenny spends a great deal of time reflecting on the letters and the implications of such a meeting. After much internal debate and soul-searching, she finally decides that she is ready to face her parents. The day of the meeting arrives, and Jenny, Samantha, and Anne make their way to the police station. The atmosphere in the police station is tense and oppressive, with the sterile environment adding to the overall sense of unease. When James and Catherine enter the room, they are dressed in prison uniforms and their hands are handcuffed. The sight of them in such a state is both shocking and heart-wrenching for Jenny. Without hesitation, she firmly asserts that she should be addressed as Jenny Clark, making it clear that she is no longer the child they once knew as Jessica Pfizer. James and Catherine then begin to tell their story. Catherine's infertility, caused by endometriosis, had been a source of great pain and despair for the couple. Their dream of having a child of their own seemed shattered. Their attempts at legal adoption were repeatedly foiled due to James's criminal past. In their younger days, they had been involved in a life of crime as con artists, deceiving and stealing from wealthy people. This criminal record haunted them when they tried to start a family the right way. In their desperate search for a child, they unfortunately got involved with an illegal adoption ring and child traffickers. One tragic night, a fire broke out at the place where Jenny was being held by these criminals. Amidst the chaos and danger, James heard Jenny's cries for help. Without a second thought, he rushed into the burning building, risking his own life to save her. He shows Jenny the burned scars on his back as a testament to his heroic act that night. As Jenny listens to their story, a complex mix of emotions surges within her. She feels a deep sense of gratitude for being saved from the fire and given a life, but at the same time, she is seething with anger at the years of deception. She confronts her parents about their continued dishonesty, not only in adopting her illegally, but also in hiding the truth from her all these years. James and Catherine finally break down and admit that their actions were driven by their own selfish and desperate desire for a child. They realize that they have been living in denial and have caused Jenny a great deal of pain. As the meeting comes to an end and Jenny is about to leave, James and Catherine anxiously ask if they will ever see her again. Jenny, still reeling from the emotional roller coaster of the meeting, says that she needs to go home and think things through. And who has been a silent observer throughout much of the meeting, then steps in and informs Jenny about her parents' 10-year prison sentence. The sentence is divided into 5 years for child abduction and 5 years for fraud and falsifying legal records, and also mentions that there is an option for Jenny to consider petitioning for clemency should she believe that her parents deserve a second chance. After the emotionally charged meeting at the police station, Jenny goes back home with Samantha. The days that follow are filled with a mix of exhaustion and a newfound determination. She spends hours poring over the legal terms and conditions for clemency and probation, trying to understand if there's a way to help her parents. Weeks pass in a blur of legal proceedings, and connects Jenny with a child legal representative, and Jenny's days are now filled with meetings, discussions, and long conversations with Samantha, who remains her unwavering support. Finally, they receive a court date. On the morning of the hearing, Jenny's nerves are on edge. The bright, clear sky outside stands in sharp contrast to the turmoil within her. She meets him outside the courthouse, and together they climb the imposing steps. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere is heavy with unspoken tension. When James and Catherine are led in, their eyes meet Jenny's, and flickers of hope and regret pass between them. The proceedings begin. Lawyers present their arguments, and the judge listens intently. When it's Jenny's turn to speak, she stands up, her voice trembling at first. She reads from a letter she had painstakingly written weeks before. In it, she talks about love, forgiveness, and the complexity of human choices. She acknowledges the pain of betrayal, but also the care she received from her parents over the years. She urges the court to consider an alternative to the full 10-year sentence. The courtroom falls silent after she finishes speaking. Then, the judge renders his verdict. James and Catherine will serve 5 years of probation, during which they will undergo counseling and community service. Any violation of the probation terms will lead to imprisonment. Jenny feels a wave of relief wash over her as she sees the tears in her parents' eyes, not just for the reduced sentence, but for the second chance they've been given. That evening, as they exit the courthouse, the setting sun casts long shadows. James and Catherine are escorted away, returning to prison for their final night before starting probation, and encourages Jenny and Samantha to go home and rest, promising to discuss the next steps later. The next morning, Jenny is woken up by Samantha's urgent voice. There's an officer in downstairs. Jenny quickly gets dressed and heads down, her heart pounding with worry. Officer Ronnie Mitchell informs her that her mother, Catherine, was taken to the hospital that morning after fainting and suffering a seizure while being driven home from prison. Jenny, Samantha, and immediately head to the hospital. The drive seems endless, and Jenny's mind is consumed with worry for Catherine. When they arrive at the hospital, they're directed to Catherine's room. As they approach, they can hear raised voices. Inside, they find James arguing with a doctor and a police officer. The doctor, Dr. Patel, explains that they found traces of an illegal substance in Catherine's bloodstream. James vehemently denies that Catherine would ever use drugs. The police officer warns that if there's evidence of drug use, it could jeopardize their probation, and they might face additional charges and a return to prison. Jenny tries to make sense of what's happening. She remembers that there were no traces of drugs in the lab tests before the hearing. She wonders how this could have happened so quickly. The officer suggests that Catherine might have abstained from drugs for 24 hours before the court date to pass the test, a tactic they've seen before. As they wait for Catherine to wake up, Jenny feels a mix of shock, confusion, and concern. She can't believe that Catherine, who had always emphasized healthy living, could be involved with drugs. She starts to wonder if the stress of prison and the legal battles could have pushed her to this. Finally, Catherine wakes up. She's confused and shocked when the officer questions her about the drugs. She firmly denies ever taking drugs and mentions that her cellmate, Martha, gave her a drink at breakfast before they left prison. The officer notes this down and says they'll investigate. The situation leaves Jenny in a difficult position. She wants to believe her mother, but the years of lies and the current circumstances make it hard for her to trust completely. She's also worried about the impact this will have on her parents' probation and their already fragile relationship. The chapter ends with Jenny in a state of uncertainty, waiting to see how the investigation unfolds and what the future holds for her and her family. Back at the hospital, the situation remains tense. Jenny watches as James and the police officer continue to argue about Catherine's condition and the drug test results. The officer insists that they need to conduct a thorough investigation, while James is desperate to prove Catherine's innocence. Dr. Patel steps in to calm the situation. He explains that they are still running more tests to determine the exact nature of the illegal substance in Catherine's bloodstream and how long she might have been using it. He also reassures Jenny and the others that Catherine is stable for now, but they need to keep a close eye on her. As the investigation unfolds, Jenny starts to recall some strange behaviors she noticed in her mother before. There were times when Catherine seemed more tired than usual or a bit distracted, but Jenny had never thought much of it. Now, she wonders if those were signs of her drug use. The police officer questions James further about their activities after leaving prison. James explains that they were driven home, and then he went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea for Catherine. He didn't notice anything unusual until she suddenly fainted. The officer takes detailed notes, looking for any clues that might help with the investigation. Jenny, still in a state of shock, turns to Samantha and Ann for support. Samantha hugs her tightly, telling her that they will get through this together, and, with her professional experience, tries to provide some perspective. She says that it's important to wait for the official investigation results before jumping to conclusions. After a while, the officer decides to go to the prison to question Catherine's cellmate, Martha, and search her cell. He also plans to look into any possible connections between Martha and drug dealers inside the prison. Before leaving, he warns James and Jenny that they need to stay put and be available for further questioning. With the officer gone, Jenny sits by Catherine's bedside, holding her hand. Catherine looks weak and pale, and Jenny can't help but feel a pang of sadness. She thinks about the years of love and care her mother has given her, and she hopes that this is all just a big misunderstanding. James, on the other hand, is pacing around the room, muttering to himself. He is clearly frustrated and angry about the situation. He keeps repeating that Catherine would never do something like this, and that someone must be setting her up. A few hours later, the officer returns. He has some new information. Martha has admitted to giving Catherine a drink, but she claims that she didn't know it was laced with drugs. She says that a fellow inmate approached her and told her that it was a special energy drink that would help Catherine feel better after leaving prison. The officer also found some drug-related paraphernalia in Martha's cell, but there is no clear evidence yet that Catherine was involved in drug use before this incident. However, the fact that the drug was in her system during her release from prison is still a serious matter. The officer then turns to Jenny and James and says that based on the current evidence, he will recommend to the court that Catherine's probation be suspended until the investigation is complete. James protests, saying that this is unfair as Catherine is innocent. Jenny, too, is disappointed but understands that the legal process must follow its course. As they leave the hospital, Jenny feels a heavy weight on her shoulders. She knows that her family is facing yet another major crisis. She wonders how she can help her parents and whether their relationship can survive all these challenges. Back at home, Jenny and James try to make sense of everything that has happened. James is still convinced that Catherine is being framed and vows to find out the truth. Jenny, while still having some doubts, decides to support her father in his quest. Over the next few days, Jenny and James start their own investigation. They talk to some of Catherine's old friends and neighbors, trying to see if anyone noticed any strange behavior in Catherine before. They also look into Martha's background, hoping to find some clues that might prove Catherine's innocence. Despite their efforts, they don't find any solid evidence. The situation remains uncertain, and Jenny is starting to lose hope. However, she knows that she can't give up. She has to keep fighting for her family, no matter how difficult it may be. With Catherine's probation in limbo, Jenny and James are determined to uncover the truth. Their days are filled with tireless efforts as they try to piece together what really happened. They visit Catherine's old workplace, hoping to find someone who might have noticed any signs of her being involved with drugs or acting differently. However, everyone they talk to seems shocked by the news and has nothing significant to offer. Jenny also decides to reach out to some of the inmates who were in the same prison block as Catherine. She manages to get in touch with a woman named Sarah through a mutual acquaintance. Sarah is initially hesitant to talk, but after Jenny pleads with her, she reveals that there was a small group of inmates who were rumored to be involved in drug-related activities. However, she is not sure if Catherine was part of it. James, on the other hand, focuses on Martha. He starts digging into her past, trying to find any connections that might link her to drug dealers outside the prison. He spends hours at the local library, looking through old newspapers and public records. Eventually, he discovers that Martha had a brother who was arrested for drug trafficking a few years ago. This discovery gives them a glimmer of hope that there might be a connection between Martha and the drugs found in Catherine's system. Meanwhile, the police are also continuing their investigation. They have been interviewing more inmates at the prison and have found a few who are willing to talk. One of them admits that there was a black market for drugs inside the prison and that Martha was known to be involved in some shady dealings. However, there is still no concrete evidence that directly links Catherine to the drugs. As the days pass, Jenny becomes more and more frustrated. She feels like they are constantly hitting dead ends in their investigation. She also has to deal with the emotional toll of the situation. She misses her mother and is worried about her health and well-being. Samantha tries to comfort her, but Jenny can't shake off the feeling of unease. And the social worker also checks in on Jenny regularly. She offers her support and advice, telling Jenny that it's important to take care of herself during this difficult time. She also updates Jenny on the legal situation, saying that the court is waiting for the final investigation results before making a decision on Catherine's probation. One day, while Jenny is going through some old photo albums at home, she comes across a picture of Catherine with a woman she doesn't recognize. The woman looks familiar, but Jenny can't quite place her. She shows the picture to James, and he also has no idea who the woman is. Jenny decides to take the picture to the prison and ask some of the inmates if they know her. At the prison, Jenny shows the picture to several inmates, and finally, one of them recognizes the woman. She tells Jenny that the woman is a known drug dealer who used to visit the prison to meet with some of the inmates. Jenny's heart sinks at this revelation. She realizes that if Catherine was associated with this woman, it could be very bad for her case. Jenny and James decide to share this new information with the police. The police are intrigued by the lead and immediately start investigating the drug dealer. They track down her whereabouts and manage to question her. The woman initially denies any connection with Catherine, but under pressure, she finally admits that she did meet Catherine a few times in the prison. However, she claims that they were just casual conversations and that she never gave Catherine any drugs. The police are not convinced by her story and continue to dig deeper. They start looking into the woman's financial records and phone calls. After days of investigation, they find some evidence that suggests the woman might have been involved in supplying drugs to Catherine. With this new evidence, the police bring the drug dealer in for further questioning. She finally breaks down and confesses that she did supply drugs to Catherine, but only because Catherine was under a lot of stress and begged her for help. She also reveals that Martha was aware of the drug dealing activities and was helping to facilitate the transactions. The police immediately arrest Martha and charge her with drug-related crimes. They also inform Jenny and James of the new developments. Jenny is relieved that they finally have some answers, but she is also heartbroken to know that her mother was indeed involved with drugs. As the case moves forward, Jenny has to face the fact that her mother will likely have to face consequences for her actions. She starts to think about how she can support her mother through this difficult time and how they can rebuild their relationship. With the truth about Catherine's drug involvement finally uncovered, Jenny is left in a state of profound emotional turmoil. On one hand, she is relieved that the mystery has been solved, but on the other, she is heartbroken that her mother was indeed involved in such a serious matter. She realizes that her mother will have to face the consequences of her actions, and this thought weighs heavily on her. James, too, is struggling to come to terms with what has happened. He had been so certain of Catherine's innocence, and now he feels betrayed not only by Martha, but also by Catherine, to some extent. However, his love for Catherine and his family's well-being ultimately prevails. He decides that they need to focus on helping Catherine get the help she needs and move forward as a family. Jenny and James meet with and to discuss the situation, and being experienced in such matters, offers them both emotional support and practical advice. She explains that Catherine will likely have to serve out the remainder of her original prison sentence, considering the violation of her probation. However, she also mentions that there could be options for rehabilitation programs within the prison system that might help Catherine overcome her drug addiction. The court proceedings related to Catherine's case resume. Jenny and James attend the hearings, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. Jenny testifies about her love for her mother and her desire for her to get better. She also expresses her understanding that the law must take its course. The judge listens carefully to all the evidence and testimonies. In the end, the judge decides that Catherine will serve the remaining 5-year prison term, with an added stipulation that she must participate in a comprehensive drug rehabilitation program. This program will be closely monitored by the prison authorities and social workers like N. The judge hopes that this will give Catherine a chance to turn her life around. After the court's decision, Jenny visits Catherine in prison. Catherine is filled with remorse and shame. She apologizes profusely to Jenny, saying that she never meant to hurt her and that she was weak under the pressure of the legal battles and the separation from her family. Jenny, despite her pain, forgives her mother. She tells Catherine that she will support her throughout her prison term and that she believes Catherine can overcome her addiction. Over the next few months, Jenny and James make regular visits to the prison to see Catherine. They bring her books, letters, and words of encouragement. Jenny also starts writing to Catherine every week, sharing her own experiences, hopes, and dreams. These letters become a source of strength for Catherine, who looks forward to them eagerly. At home, Jenny and James try to rebuild their own lives as well. Jenny continues to live with Samantha, and they support each other through this difficult time. Samantha is a constant source of comfort for Jenny, always there to listen and offer a shoulder to cry on. James, on the other hand, focuses on his work and tries to keep himself busy. He also starts attending counseling sessions to deal with his own emotions and to better understand how he can support Catherine and Jenny. As time passes, Catherine shows signs of progress in the rehabilitation program. She becomes more positive and determined to overcome her addiction. She writes back to Jenny, sharing her achievements in the program and her gratitude for her daughter's unwavering support. These letters from Catherine give Jenny and James hope that their family can eventually heal and be together again. Jenny also starts to think about her future. She decides to pursue a career in social work, inspired by and in her own experiences. She wants to help others who are going through similar difficult situations. She enrolls in a local college and begins taking courses related to social work. In the long run, the family's journey is still filled with challenges, but they are all committed to each other. Jenny, James, and Catherine are slowly rebuilding their relationships, one step at a time. They know that the road ahead will be tough, but they are determined to face it together, with love and hope guiding them. The story concludes with a sense of optimism, as the family begins to find a new normal, filled with the promise of a better future.
If this story touched you, show your support by liking and subscribing. Your encouragement helps us keep sharing memorable stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.